We spend a lot of time on what we should accomplish and very little time on how we should accomplish it.
Here we are at $4 million strategies. This is your host, Carl J. Cox. Today, we have our special guest, Jim Huling, author of The 4 Disciplines of Execution. Today's subject is, how do we have the best strategic execution methodology? Jim, tell us, what should we do to help make sure we're going to actually hit and beat what we say we're going to do from a strategic standpoint?
What a great question, Carl. Thank you. There are 4 things we've got to pay a lot of attention to. So number 1, we can only be successful at doing something incredibly significant if we narrow our focus to the things that matter most. The law of diminishing returns is very real in goal setting. So if we try to hit 20 goals at a high level, we're going to miss almost all of them. But when we narrow our focus to the one that matters most, we dramatically increase the likelihood we'll do what we said we would do. Second, every goal needs to be supported by clarity around the actions that actually drive the goal. In fact, this is, in my view, the single biggest problem in all of goal setting and strategic execution. We spend a lot of time on what we should accomplish and very little time on how we should accomplish it. But the real executing happens down below the boardroom, down below the strategic plan. You know, it's a person who shows up to work every day and decides whether to give their best or not give their best. And some of that comes down to clarity of what to do. So the second thing is absolute clarity on what actions drive the greatest results. If you don't know the answer to that, you're not ready to execute. Third is, does anybody care? The third of 4 ideas is this just another thing I'm supposed to do? Is this just more work? Is this a box you get to check, boss, but has little effect on all of us, right? So creating some kind of a sense that we are not only working in order to have our jobs and to be fairly paid, but we're working to do something that matters, something that we're proud of, something that we'll look back on one day and say, yeah, I was on that team that had that breakthrough result. So how do we create a strategic execution to be something that really matters? And then last of all, and most important of all, can we build the capability to be accountable to each other and to ourselves? Most accountability in most organizations is just top down. You're accountable to your boss. And Carl, in most organizations, if my boss is happy with me and he's not happy with you, I might be sad for you, but it doesn't really affect me. But on great teams, they are accountable to each other. If we were peers, I could look at you and say, hey, we're not bringing our best, you and me. Let's up our game next week. Like happens in athletics and all other fields of human endeavor. But in the workplace, we seldom build what I like to call horizontal accountability. We have vertical accountability to our boss and to our compensation and our bonus or whatever it is. But we have very little horizontal accountability to each other unless you're on a great team. And if you're on a great team, great teams call each other out. Great teams celebrate each other's accomplishments. Great teams support each other. Great teams cover each other's back. They do those things because it feels great to be part of a great team. And in the end, you always end up accomplishing more. So those 4 things are the most critical for strategic execution, in my view.
You mentioned on how to create teams and you want to make sure there's engagement. What is one really good, simple tip that people can use to help foster that environment?
Yeah, the one biggest, most impactful thing is to make sure that every voice can be represented. So many times 12 people sit in a room and design all the goals for 200,000 people in an organization. And the people who have to do the executing had no voice in that whatsoever. And the great tragedy is sometimes the people who are closest to the work understand the work in the most brilliant way that you've been in the boardroom or the executive suite so long, you may not understand it the way they do. So to create an environment where everybody feels they had an opportunity to be part of the goal setting, then when it's time to execute, they'll be able to do it with a strong sense of ownership.
Jim, thank you so much for your contributions here on the $4 million strategy today.